Right now, we are joined by none other than Mina Uscharawadi, who's coming off of her back-to-back wins this last weekend at Fierce Challenger Series 5. Mina, it's so good to talk to you after that win last weekend.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
How are you doing? How have things been just the last couple of days since your fight? I mean, you looked great in there, and it seems like you might want to do some sort of a quick turnaround, possibly.
Yeah, so I'm feeling really good. I definitely think I'm still kind of running off a high. Um yeah, and I'm ready to get back in there. I like that Saturday was just a reflection again that the training's working. Just a lot of things came together for me, and that was just a stepping stone. Yeah, I just intend to fight again and continue just like building. I really want to like follow this, like build off this momentum.
That's kind of the big thing that I wanted to talk to you about. We spoke to you last year around September, I believe it was. You were 1-1 at the time. Now you're 3-2, a whole lot more miles under your career
Yeah.
now, and you've done an amazing job across that way. 2-fight win streak, a finish on this last Saturday. I just kind of wanted to ask you about your growth. You have grown as a fighter and just gotten better and better, it seems like, every single time you've made the walk. What do you attribute that to?
Honestly, I for me, it's staying active. The word conditioning is something I like to use a lot. And I think we often talk about it in the physical sense of like we condition our bodies for fighting, but a lot of it too, like being active is all about conditioning the mind. And I feel like, or no, I know this, like the more I expose myself to the discomfort of fighting, the discomfort of training, my body becomes more conditioned for it. And I feel more and more just like ready when fight night comes. And so I've been able to see that like mentally when on the week of the fight, I'm just always feeling, I feel more ready. I feel more at peace. By the time I walk into the cage, I'm just in a good spot. I'm ready to go. I feel a lot more connected with myself. And so I again I attribute the growth, a lot of it to activity, and again just constantly exposing myself to just the discomfort of fighting and getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. And I think that's what allows me to really feel connected when I'm in the cage. Um, so
That
yeah.
that's that's a fascinating way to put it. And I mean, I think that you would be the poster child for everything you just said. Every single fight week that you are on, I come up to you and say, "Hey, how you doing? How you feeling?" And sometimes fighters are more like, "Oh, I'm a little nervous," or "Oh, I'm cutting weight." You're just like, "Hey, Blake, it's great to see you." You are so normal on fight week and just so
Yeah.
yourself on fight week. Do
Yeah.
you do you think that that's always been the case? Have you always been that way, or do you think that you've developed that over these last couple of months where you've been so active?
I think it's been a process, but no, I have not always been this way. In fact, I mean, I we've talked about, man, to be honest, this sounds weird, but it's like finally I feel like in these past few months, one thing I can say is that I'm starting to be like a believer in myself. I'm seeing things come together and I'm seeing the training come together. And that in itself is helping me to mentally believe in myself and like feel even more confident um, every time I step into the cage. And I did not always feel that way. I think, especially when I first started fighting, I always had a tenacity and a determination about me and just down to fight, just down to bang. But especially when I first started off in Thailand, I mean, I think I'd shared with you, I'd had maybe about a month and a half of training in just Muay Thai. Before that, maybe a year of boxing, like in my background. But at the time, again, like I had no exposure to like, I had no ring time. I just went in there and I would just fight. So I know that I've always had the ability to just get in there and just like, okay, rise to the occasion. But leading, I guess, from that time to now, I would say I've grown a lot mentally and emotionally. There is like a level of like nerves and anxiety. I think that hits every fighter before they step into that ring or that cage. And it's not to say that I don't have those. I still have those, and I think I'll always have those because I think that's my nervous system getting ready to fight. But I am a lot more acquainted now with with what that feels like. I understand like how to process that in my body and my mind a lot more now than I ever have before. And I definitely think I'm still getting there, but coupling that now with all the training that I'm doing, especially in MMA, there's so much going on in MMA. I'm just getting I'm getting a lot better at being able to put everything together and more so like trust myself, trust my training, and trust my body just to show up for me when it's time to fight.
I really want to get back to that putting it all together, because that has kind of been a narrative over the last couple of months for you, for sure, considering the submission win. But I do want to ask you, you talked about becoming a believer. Is there a
Yeah.
specific moment in a fight in the training room where you went, okay, I do believe in myself? And then you kind of did have this kind of coming of age moment, I guess, for yourself in your fight career?
Well, man, a specific moment. Well, I'll say this. I'm not sure if I shared this one with you before, but there was a time, it was my second MMA fight, and that's when I had broken my face, right? So I fought this really great fighter, Leslie Hernandez, down in Arizona. I she broke both my orbitals. I mean, I had a lot of like trauma, and just sitting in the emergency room that night for about like 7 hours, just in darkness, um, really like working through a lot of my demons. I've shared that. I did have a moment specifically. I remember the nurse came up to me. She never asked me any questions. She asked me one question, and all she asked was, "Are you done fighting now?" And from that moment, I just remember laughing at her. That was the moment I knew I wasn't done. So, like in my darkest hour, literally, when I had felt like my body, when I wasn't sure if my body had the ability to go on, if I could ever keep fighting, there was something inside of me, like I truly believe, like my spirit that knew I wasn't finished, that knew like there was some part of me that had a lot more to give and that I haven't seen the best of myself yet. There was like a deep belief already within me, like that I was able to like recognize. So I feel like that's like a little flame that has carried me through. But coming back from that fight, that was in 2021, there was a period where I actually felt like I did have some PTSD. I remember I talked about this before. I had to start exposing myself little by little to like jujitsu tournaments. And then finally leading up to my fight with Ludi, that was my comeback MMA fight back in October. Um, that was also I lost that fight, but again, it was something that I started to see some things come together for me there. And then in the Mali fight, again, like my training, I was able to take stuff from my training, or I was able to take kind of evaluate the things that went right with Ludi, the things that went wrong in that fight, um, and then implement, kind of change things up in my training. And when I was able to start seeing the grappling, when that Mali fight showed me that I am an MMA fighter. That was the fight where I was able to see myself do things that I had never done before in a fight, when it came to ground and pound and grappling and being able to, wrestle my way out of the cage and whatnot. And so that's when I started recognizing the training's working. I was starting to see how like things were coming together there. And then just to ride off that momentum into this fight with Carly, it again, like it just solidified just a little bit more that I'm on the right path, and I've always believed in myself. But because I had like also suffered a lot of losses, there was always still just that doubt of, is this my story? Am I just really like a diehard determined person and I have that fight in me, but maybe I just lose and I just I'm really good at getting back up and fighting again. But I really do. Now I'm in that space where it's like, no, like it's my time. It's my time to win. It's my time to really see the fruits of my labor. And I don't say that out of like hope. I know that because I train hard. Like I work really hard, and I really have like sacrificed everything for this. And I don't even, I'm an amateur still. And so, I don't know what the future holds, but what I do know is like, I believe in my work ethic, and I believe in like the sacrifices that I've made to come this far. And I know what I want to see in myself. And I believe that there's a lot of potential that's still yet to be unlocked. And I get so hyped to be able to like unlock that. I know the training's working, and so I'm just excited to unlock just another layer. I feel like a little by little, like we're edging away and we see a little bit more every fight.
I am extremely curious. You brought up something that I'm very, very intrigued by, specifically the Ludi loss. You had been gone for a year and a half. And how
Yeah.
did you kind of deal with that? Because in your mind, I remember talking to you, you were excited, you were confident, but also it seems like that was just another part of the story for you now in hindsight.
I had someone once tell me that they were like, you don't respect the sport of MMA. And I didn't quite understand it at first, but when I look back at that Levy fight, it was a full on, it was an awesome fight, but it was just a striking match. And I had not yet felt comfortable enough. If I were to like look back at that fight, there were opportunities for me to take her down, especially with size difference. She was a lot taller than me. I'm shorter. Had I felt more confident in my grappling at the time, I think that that fight could have looked really different. And walking away from that fight, that was one of those things I reevaluated. I watched it back and I could see opportunities that I had missed. Had I approached it like an MMA fight, I think that I was still approaching it as just a striker. And I have to have those are like come to Jesus moments that you have to have with yourself. It's like if you're going to be in an MMA fight, then fight MMA. That means that, again, you have to be confident and willing to take the fight wherever it needs to go. And I believe actually I had talked about being confident at the time, and I was walking into that. But again, I just needed more reps. That was what I saw from that fight. I had been training, I had been working on my grappling. I had felt very confident in my jujitsu. Um, but I knew that I just needed more reps to feel more confident. And so that's what I did. I just keep putting in the reps. So that's why I love fighting so much. And that's why I want to ride this momentum, because it's like every time I already know that I am better than the last because I'm getting those reps in and I'm putting the time in.
Exactly. And I mean, let's talk about that. You have a grappling, more of a grappling like match against Mally. And then you have this one
Yeah.
where you get the submission over Carly Lombardo, where you perfectly did mix in your striking with your grappling. Your jiu-jitsu coach actually kind of gave me a little bit of a hard time about that because I was making you out to be more of a striker. And he
Yep.
was like, hey, well, she does get the submission here tonight. So I hats off to Reese for sure over at Wasatch Combat Sports, who's doing a great job in the grappling department. How has
Yes.
it been developing that other part of your game, the grappling side of things? And what has that journey kind of been like over the last couple of years?
Honestly, I love jujitsu. I really do. And in fact, I always say jujitsu gave me a path. It saved me in a sense. Like after again that fight with Leslie and I broke my face, there was a lot mentally that I had to work through. And I had mentioned before, it was those jujitsu tournaments that gave me that first exposure back to the competitive world and like entering that place in my mind. I had a lot of fears that I was still working through after that fight, that MMA fight. And so jujitsu, I talk more about like the mental aspects. So it was actually like therapeutic for me. It helped. It gave me a way to expose myself to the discomfort, to mentally go to a place that was uncomfortable, um, and then just to kind of like live in that space for a little bit, little by little. And so I honestly don't think I would be where I am today without jujitsu. I love it. And I don't mean that in just the fighting sense. I truly mean it. It has helped me again like rediscover parts of myself that I have needed to unlock in order to fight. And so no matter what, when I stop like fighting MMA, I will jujitsu for me is forever. I are just grappling in general. Finally, I love the movement. I love the flow of it. I love the way I feel. And so it also helps me live out. I feel like I'm a ninja. Like who doesn't want to be a ninja? And I used to always like as a kid, I'm like, oh, I want to be a ninja. And then one day it hit me. I'm like, jujitsu is me fulfilling my dreams of being a ninja and like moving a certain way. And it sounds so corny, but really there's so much I love about just about grappling in general. And I feel a lot more complete now just being able to have that in my back pocket. That last fight with Carly, I did not plan on like going for that submission. It just presented itself and it felt so good to know that my body could just react. And it felt so good just to know that I had that in me. That another tool just in my back pocket.
It was the knockdown, and then you chased the back from what I can remember. But can you kind of walk us through what you did?
Yeah. So once I knocked her down, I saw her. I mean, it's crazy. Watching it back, it all happened super fast. But in my head, I remember seeing her down, and then I wanted to go for the finish. I did not want that fight to go into the second round. I had like believed going into that fight, like in my mind, I didn't want to say it, tell anyone, but I had believed, I had kind of already decided, like, I want this to end in the first round. So once I knocked her down, I already knew that I wanted to finish. Initially, actually, I was just going to ground and pound her. And I thought that I'd be able to finish her there. But I think after like a couple of my strikes, my hand happened to slip under her neck. And honestly, just I felt it. There was a moment where I do remember like thinking, because I know that Carly's a wrestler. I know that she's had like, I think she like wrestled in college or something in that sort. So I knew that there was like a threat or a risk there. But honestly, like once I felt like my hand in her neck, it just felt right. I'm not gonna lie. I just trusted. I knew I had it. I knew, and then I got my hooks in, and I knew it was finished. Yeah.
So we talked about this on Saturday. You now have a knockout, a decision win, as well as a submission win. Which one is your favorite?
Um. Oh man. I would have to say, I think each of them have presented like beautiful. You know what? I kind of loved that submission only because it sounds really terrible, but it puts the other person in a position to like surrender. Like,
No, that's
I
fair.
mean, and I just, they have to tap. Like it's up to it's their decision to stop. I kind of like that.
I mean, it's been a little while since you've knocked someone out in the cage. I mean, do you miss that at all? I mean, a lot of fighters always tell me that the knockout is the best feeling. Do you miss that at all? Like it's been I think 2 years at this point now.
it feels it feels good when your fist lands clean on someone's jaw. I mean, there is no other feeling like that connection. It's powerful. It really is powerful. And it's like effortless too. There is something really beautiful about that. So yeah, you know what? I'm not gonna lie. Just a clean knockout. I think I'm still searching for that. I've had like knockdowns, like TKOs, whatnot, but I I like I said, I know I've got like a hand, like, and I know I've got power, and just yeah, that connection, I live for that. It feels so good. And there's not many times that you can freely just do that.
What do you think the future holds for you in terms of MMA and jiu-jitsu? How much longer do you think you want to do MMA, and how much more jiu-jitsu competing do you think you want to do in that time frame?
Um, well, when it comes to MMA, I will say this. I think that as long as I can continue moving forward without injury, like taking like head trauma, and again, these past few fights have allowed me to do that. I just intend to stay as active as I possibly can and go as far as I possibly can. I think again, like that's all dependent upon just injuries. I don't see my if I for instance, that one fight again, I always talk about that fight because that was a pivotal moment for me. Like the as far as head trauma goes, I take that really seriously. Um, I'm still I'm older in the game too. Like I'm 34 years old, and so I I'm I mean, I don't have as many miles on me as people who've started from a much younger age. At the same time, I'm not getting any younger. And so I'm giving myself maybe like a couple years to just go as far as I can go. But again, that is all dependent upon like if I can walk away without injury. If I can walk away without injuries from these fights and play smart, be smart about it, then I'm not going to cap myself. I'm going to go as far as I possibly can, and also until I feel like I have fulfilled the potential that and seen myself, perform in the way that I know and believe I can. I want to be tested. I want to be challenged. I I want to see myself perform at the highest level I I'm able to. And so
For your jiu-jitsu future, for your grappling future, Do you want to continue to compete in grappling as you are also taking MMA fights, or do you think that that's going to be saved for when the MMA career closes down?
I think for me, I love being active in everything. So as long as that the competition can supplement my training and preparation for fights, then I'll do it. And so again, that all just depends on the how I guess the time frame between one fight to another,
Mhm.
right? If my fights are like back to back or a lot closer, then I might just save my energy for training camps. But I know before my fight with Mally, so the last MMA fight that I had done a competition, a jujitsu tournament right before I entered my fight camp. And I loved that. It was a great way for me to just jumpstart my mindset and get in the zone. And um, for me, jujitsu is forever. So no matter what, like once I'm done with MMA, like that was always the goal in my mind. Like I want to be a black belt one day. That is forever. I want to be able to see myself continue just to grow and progress no matter what. But for right now, MMA is the top priority. So everything, as long as it makes sense, and the putting where I put my energy, or the output and energy preps me for those MMA fights, and that's kind of how I'll gauge what the grappling tournaments and whatnot, where my activity goes in there.
If you could go back to the person after you had fought Leslie in that dark room, like you've talked about before, now on a 2 fight win streak, potentially fighting for a title in the next couple of months, if that's what Fierce sees fit, what would you say to that person in terms of, someone who just went through one of the most horrendous and, like you've said, traumatic, fights of your entire life?
Oh man, I guess honestly, knowing like where I was at and how I felt, I honestly would just give that person, that Mina, I would give her a hug, and I would just tell her like get up and get to work. I was just like believe. I would just tell her to believe that thing inside of her. Sometimes belief, it makes you feel crazy, especially when you are in your darkest moment and physically and all the evidence tells you that you're broken. It's hard. That belief inside of you can almost seem just like a false hope, like a false, you know what I mean? It's just like everyone has dreams, but I would just tell her like you're not crazy. Like keep going, get up and get to work. If you want it, like you can have it.
Would you say you're living your dream right now every time you make that walk?
That makes me emotional. Yes, I would 100% say that I am living my dream. Has it been easy? No. Is it easy? No. There's a lot of sacrifice that has come with living this dream of mine. But I always have to remind myself this is my dream. And that's why I have made the sacrifices that I have. And the reason why things are hard is because I am sacrificing for my dream. And so in that regard, it all comes together for me. And I truly wouldn't be doing anything else.
Last 2 questions from me. What is the hardest thing about fighting? Your biggest sacrifice?
I would say one of the hardest things is that it is not easy for my family to understand the life that I lead. It is really hard for my parents to see me fighting. And I used to not understand. I used to get upset when I very first started, and I thought, oh, like they're just against me, like they don't believe in me. But as the years have gone by, I've come to understand they're my parents, and it will always be their job. From the day they decided like that my mom gave birth to me, her role was to protect me. And my mom's also a nurse. So she has just seen like the worst, and she understands the effects of like head trauma and whatnot. So the hardest thing for me is to know that my dream is hard for some of the people closest to me to accept, and I'm not going to stop fighting. um, but that has presented its challenges. At the same time, they've never tried to stop me. I just know that it's hard for them, and it's hard for me to know that um, that it is hard for them, that it does like create a stress for them. There's not a lot of security in this industry when it comes to fighting in general. Like every time you walk into a cage, there is never a guarantee that you're not going to get injured, that you're going to walk out, on top. I mean, look at the Ludi fight. I felt like I was like winning. I felt like I was performing really well for, you know, all the way up until the last 30 seconds, and suddenly the ref stopped it with a TKO. Like there's just no guarantees, especially in this industry, in this game. But nonetheless, like I said, maybe I'm just crazy enough and I just believe enough in myself and I love this enough that I'm not going to walk away from it. And that's the best part of who I am. But I also know that it's hard for the people who love me.
So, biggest sacrifice, most difficult part. I do want to transition over to final question. What's the best part about fighting for you? What makes it your dream?
Is that I guess I have been able to unlock and see things in myself that I only believed and wished could be there at one point in my life. Like I said, I talked about like being a ninja or whatever as a kid. I literally like you sometimes I never fought or was never exposed to fighting or anything like that as a kid growing up, but you kind of just sometimes daydream about it. It just has always felt like something inside of me. And to finally see, it's so crazy. Like with every fight, like I say, I see things come together. I see myself. It's like I unlock another layer of who I am, and it actually manifests inside of that cage. And just to see myself like work so hard for something, and then again for it to come together, that is a dream. And not only that, just the confidence, the self-confidence that has come from fighting, and the belief in my ability just to stand on my own 2 feet and know what I'm made of, and to really see like who God has made me. That for me, I nobody could ever give that to me, even from my losses. I always talk, I talk so much about that Leslie fight. That fight, I lost that fight, truly, but I had never felt stronger in my whole life than in that fight. When I was able to, at the end of the third round, when one of the toughest people I'd ever fought had done everything, to beat me and to just be able to stand, there was like this strength and this confidence from inside that I had felt that I'd never felt in my whole entire life. And I feel and I know like I know that I can lean on that. I know what I'm made of in a sense. And that's not something people can tell you that. People can tell you that they believe in you. People can build you up. And that's really powerful to have support. But when you start believing in yourself and you see yourself like rise above really hard times, um, the growth that comes from fighting, it happens in just a short amount of time. I always say like I'm never the same after those 9 minutes in the cage. Well, I guess like 12 minutes, right? But it changes me. It changes you, and those are gifts. It's given me these wonderful gifts and helped me to again just I feel like become the best version of who I believe and have always believed that I am. And I like I said, I feel like I'm still unlocking potential, and that's what drives me. I feed off of it. I love it.
Well, Mina, you continue to unlock more potential every time you seem to make that walk. You continue to grow. Thank you so, so much for your time. I really appreciate it.